Hi everyone, welcome to Beyond Boba, a podcast brought to you by APIDA interns where we aim to dispel myths about the Asian community. My name is Ian.
And my name is Amy. So our goal today is to explore the Asian identity beyond the label of boba liberalism and essentially burst our own bubble through having honest conversations about our experiences as members of the APIDA community. So in today's episode, Ian and I will be talking about body image and mental health.
But before we begin, we would like to just give a content warning to all of our viewers and listeners. This episode will cover topics such as depression, anxiety, therapy, possible mentions of suicide, as well as mentions of eating disorders. So if any of these are sensitive topics for you, feel free to step back, and we encourage you to get the help that you need. And you can find a list of resources in the description of this episode. So without any further ado, let's get started. So mental health is such a big topic, I think, within the Asian community. I feel like a good place to start is probably, how has your view of mental health changed throughout the years and throughout your life?
Yeah, sure. So I'll take this question. So my view of mental health has definitely changed over the years. When I was a kid, I didn't really think that mental health was an issue or a problem. And I think the way social media portrayed mental health, I genuinely felt like it was just something kind of passing. It was just something that I saw on a graphic and it didn't really apply to my life. And I don't think that it was until I had to go through my own mental health journey, deal with things like depression and stress and anxiety, that's when I truly understood the value of mental health and how much that really matters to your life. I feel like a lot of times people value physical health, and that's great and that's amazing and that's important. But I think something else that's important is taking a mental health break. And I think people are starting to emphasize it more now, which is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think mental health is something that a lot of, older people in the Asian generations don't really know about. It's something that, like people who grew up here in America, like us, probably have like a more personal experience with. Like I, for one, when I started really struggling with my mental health in high school, like at the beginning, mental health wasn't even something that my parents knew existed. And they at first kind of just seemed like, oh, like, why is this such like a big issue? Like it just seems like you're really, really sad and you're just really stressed all the time. And that's kind of like, like, oh, in our generation, we had all these kinds of issues and we also dealt with them. And so, like, if we can do it, you can do it too. And it comes from a place of, like, care and love in thinking that, like, oh, they're giving us support. But I think at the time I was really frustrated with their responses at times because I felt like our set of problems is so different than theirs. And I had to remind myself to kind of like stay empathetic because they grew up in a very different world than we did, especially like Asian parents who are immigrants from Asian countries. A lot of them are like escaping poverty, escaping war-torn countries. A lot of them grew up where they didn't have as many like material comforts, or maybe they struggled to put a roof over their head or put food on the table. And that is a very valid and very kind of deep kind of struggle. So it's like I guess I felt like it wasn't fair for me to feel like, oh, I'm complaining about their response because they had a tough life too. And it wasn't until I really started going to therapy and learning more about mental health that I realized that, like, this is such a new kind of concept. And there's definitely a lot of work to be done in the Asian community in, like, not even educating the older generation, like, even us. I feel like we, as Asian kind of youth and college students and teenagers, have a lot to learn and accept about this topic that has such a heavy stigma around it. And that would just start with, kind of talking about it like we are now. So, yeah.
Yeah. I would also say that, just to add to that, I think different generations are always going to experience different types of mental health stress. So, therefore, our mental health experiences aren't any less valid than our parents. For example, we're exposed to a lot of social media these days.
Yes.
And I actually watched the documentary Social Dilemma a couple days ago, and apparently that the fact that we have social media, that has made us a lot more susceptible to depression than previous generations. Previous generations our age, I mean. But again, of course, our parents have gone through their own things as well. And just to add to that, I think I completely understand that feeling of your parents not understanding the mental health issues that you have gone through, or them not understanding at least the existence of mental health issues. From my experience, when I was going through things, my parents were kind of like, just be happy. And it was kind of funny thing because, yeah, of course, I want to be happy. I don't want to, no one wants to be sad. When people are sad, they don't ask to be sad. And if it was so easy to just ask people to be happy, then, and it was just a feeling that you could turn on, then anybody could do it, right? But of course, I understand where they were coming from. I just wish they understood my perspective a little bit more. But, you know, I think as we kept going through the mental health journey, both of us were able to understand each other more. And we just knew that we wanted the best for each other. And I just want to say that I know that I was lucky that I had a pretty good support system. But maybe we can talk about support systems more and how people can get help.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, having a support system, I think, is so important. I mean, because just like you, I was very lucky to have a very strong and supportive support system. But it's just the issue of kind of getting help in the first place, because I think this is an issue that's not unique, but it's a very common kind of issue in the Asian or the APIDA community when it comes to mental health, is like the realization that maybe we're not okay is not too hard of a conclusion to come to. I mean, it may take some struggle, but it's not too hard for you to kind of eventually realize, I'm really not doing okay. This is not the norm. Like, I shouldn't be like this every day. But when it comes to actually figuring out how do you build your support system, how do you get the help that you need, that's where it gets difficult, because mental health is such a hard topic to talk about. And so many people that I know, even me included, we were scared to get help in the first place. And also, you know, like a lot of, I think, preliminary conversations that we have with the first people that we tend to turn to, such as, you know, like a parent or guardian or someone that kind of fills in that kind of role within the Asian community, because of that generational difference. A lot of those conversations might not go the way we want them to, and that discourages us from getting help, because we feel like maybe we don't need to get help. Maybe this is just my problem that I have to deal with on my own. And like, I can't speak for everyone, but for me personally, it took me a very long time to get help, because I'm lucky enough to have a very close relationship with my parents, and I tell them everything. So it didn't take them long to figure out that it seemed like I was not okay. I was kind of off during this period of time in high school. And that's when I was really struggling with my mental health. And I talked to them about it. I didn't know how to talk to them about it at the time. I just knew that I really wasn't okay. And I was coming home every day and feeling miserable and just feeling like, what is the point to all of this? But then in those conversations with them, I feel like they also weren't properly educated or equipped to have those kinds of conversations with me. And so a lot of the times I would leave those conversations even more upset, even more hopeless than I was entering them. And so I didn't even think of therapy as like a solution for a long time. I didn't even think of finding other ways to get help, because I feel like a lot of us in the Asian community kind of tend to turn to our elders as our main source of help or support. And those elders can be like from parents or teachers or relatives, or like kind of like an elder type of role. And so then that is like a barrier in and of itself to getting help, is realizing that therapy is not like, it's not wronging your parents in any way to go to therapy. It doesn't mean your parents have failed, because, you know, mental health is, like you said earlier, it's like health. Like, if you're sick, you go to a doctor. I mean, a lot of Asian parents have their own like home remedies for illnesses and stuff. But like, when you really are like sick, you go to a doctor to get help, because the doctor is properly educated and equipped to help you with that. And it should be the same with mental health, where, of course, like having a good support system like your parents or family or friends is definitely good. But when you do arrive at a place where you need the proper help that your parents or your friends or your usual kind of everyday support system can't give you anymore, then that's when you should feel comfortable going to like a professional source for help. And there shouldn't be anything to be ashamed of in any way. And I think that's also a really important topic when it comes to mental health, is the sense of shame that comes with looking for help.
Of course. Yeah. As I'm listening to you speak, it makes me genuinely wonder. Like that was a great analogy. If you're sick, you get help. And I think the part of the reason it's such a stigma is that when you say the words mental health, mental is kind of like related to your brain. And I think in a lot of families, they feel more comfortable addressing like the physical than up here. They're kind of like, oh, up here, I don't want anything to be wrong with my child up here. I want him or her to be okay. But if you want him or her to be okay, then please seek help, right? And the other thing is that as I'm listening to you speak, man, I'm really tempted to kind of give almost like, I guess, advice on what you should be noticing if you're feeling like depression or therapy, or not therapy, if you're feeling depression or if you're feeling suicidal. I feel like you should be like looking out for signs, but instead of listing out signs, I would say if you're feeling off, I highly recommend just seeking professional help. And it's great sometimes when you look on Instagram for infographics to see kind of like symptoms and things like that, because it's nice to find a community online of people who can relate to you. But also at the same time, you have to realize that if you really need help, you have to get it from a professional, and you can't just rely on social media. It can be like a safe space, but you can use that on top of professional help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that social media, you know, all of its kind of downsides aside, is like a good source for people to like maybe start just recognizing that maybe like I should go seek help. Because I know for a fact that this like this obstacle of dealing with kind of educating the older generation about mental health, or even educating ourselves, like that's a very long process. It's not something we can fix in like a day. It takes a long time to kind of shift this culture of shame around mental health and getting help for it. And so like in the meantime, I think having this online community of people who you can relate to, who you can talk to, is like a good start, I would say. I would say it's a good start. And like obviously seek professional help if you need. But social media and or even just like having friends, I think talking about it with friends helps. Yeah, so I think now is a good time to segue to our next topic, which is going to be body image. There's a lot to talk about with that one as well, but I feel like we can just start with the standard of beauty, I think, because there's so many ways we can go with this. But the standard of beauty, especially within the Asian community, within the APIDA community, oh my God, you have boba.
I do. I was trying to figure out a way to transition this smoothly, but since we're talking about body image, I was like, okay, somehow this is the right time.
Do it, just...
I guess, yeah, so we can talk about like the standard of beauty, the APD community, and we can also talk about cultural differences in body image, or maybe our own eating habits and journeys. So anywhere with that.
I feel like maybe cultural differences, let's start off there. I think there's a lot of maybe shared experiences that we can talk about here, because I know that while it seems like across the globe there is like a common sort of body type that is pushed in the beauty industry in terms of like the standard of beauty, I think how far different places and different societies have come with dealing with that has been pretty different. You know, like I think I've noticed that at least in America, this standard of beauty has progressed adequately, I would say. I mean, there's always work to do, but I am definitely noticing like this culture of shifting from needing to look like a Victoria's Secret model to encouraging like working out so you can be healthy and you can be strong. And it almost feels like there's like you're allowed to not be that supermodel runway kind of body anymore. You know, like people are talking about using words like thick or whatever, you know, to kind of talk about like a more kind of non like ultra skinny kind of body type. And obviously that's progress. Obviously there's always like more that you can go. But it's like those conversations are happening, and I feel like we've come further in terms of body positivity and body inclusivity than a lot of Eastern countries and a lot of Eastern cultures, you know. I mean, I can't speak for all Asian countries, but I do know for a fact that, like I was told by my sister a while ago that, like, fairly recently there was a trend going around in China and I don't know, maybe a few other Asian countries too. It was called like the paper test or something, where you took like a piece of blank white paper and you held it up vertically and you had to put it in front of your waist. And if your waist was thicker than the paper, then it was like too thick. And like that just seems like such a wild kind of thing because, you know, like here in America, we have things like talking about like working out, eating healthy, eating clean, things like that. And we're already having like much more kind of diverse types of models in clothing companies. You know, like now when I'm retail therapy, online shopping, you know, like I'm starting to see more models on these clothing websites that look more like the average person and not like the same 5'9", 5'10", like skinny blonde like woman who's modeling clothes. Whereas it seems like in a lot of Asian countries, it's that very much still is what is very heavily expected, and there is almost no alternative. It's either you look like this tall, skinny kind of type, or you don't meet it. And obviously this is all pertaining to body standards for women.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. First of all, I was just going to say that, yes, I've also seen YouTube videos of the trends in China where they're really just trying to test the fact that you're skinny. I could list a couple more tests, but if you just Google them, you'll be able to find them. And I will also say that I think Victoria's Secret has been caught under fire. These last couple of years, I don't think they're doing as successfully. And part of that reason is because a lot of brands are becoming more body image and body positive, but Victoria's Secret is still kind of more on like the conservative times, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. And I know we were talking about the differences between, I guess, America and Asia when it comes to body positivity. And again, I'm not speaking for all of Asia. I'm just speaking from what I've observed from parts of Asia. So, for example, in America, you can see it in the entertainment industry. There's so many different types of beauty. And I think a lot of what that has to do with is the fact that these artists are very like individual. And so once you're individual mm-hmm. and you kind of go out and become famous, you are the one creating the body image. Versus in Asia, if you noticed it, not only in the like the modeling industry, but in the entertainment industry, it's kind of like the same people shown again and again and again. And not only is it the same people shown, but they're kind of working under like an agency. And at least in like Korea, when they have those agencies, and they're forming these K-pop bands and groups and whatever of the sort, there is a specific look. There's definitely a very much specific look, and it's not as if the artist is going out and creating the body image, but instead they're confining to the body image. And it seems like what that has to do is like pale skin, skinny and tall. And a lot of that can lead to eating disorders. So do we want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think this might be a little bit of a sensitive topic, but I mean, just like the ways that these almost like impossible standards feed into the ways that, you know, young people kind of try to force themselves into those standards. I don't know about like Asia, but I know that even now in America, even though we have come as far as we have already in terms of like body positivity, things like that, like disordered eating or eating disorders is still a very common issue that a lot of people face. And you would think that, you know, with talks about so many different types of bodies that are accepted now, because, you know, you hear people online say things like, oh, like you can be thick because like you'll have the butt that everyone wants, or like, you know, and it's also okay if you're skinny, or it's okay if you look like this, look like, you know, every body is beautiful in its own way. People say that. But I feel like I feel like that original kind of foundational sense of the beauty standard is just so deeply rooted that it's still an issue for so many young girls. And like I know for a fact that like me personally, when I was around middle school, I think the ultra skinny supermodel kind of body type was really kind of the it body type around that age. I don't know about you, but that seemed like it was like everyone felt like they needed to be, where all these young girls felt like they needed to look that way. And very, very quickly, within a few years, when I got to high school, people were starting to be more inclusive of body types and saying like, oh, like plus size bodies are still beautiful. And even like, because no one really by default looks like a supermodel. So like, you don't have to look like a supermodel to be beautiful. Like all body types are beautiful and all your imperfections are beautiful. But that change happened so fast. And I mean, it was like a few years, but I feel like for something in terms of like body standards, just a couple of years is a very fast, kind of very rapid shift in expectations or just attitudes around body types. And so, at least for me personally, mentally, I was still processing that like supermodel type of body image that I felt like I had to adhere to. And it was like, I felt like my brain was kind of torn in half, where it was like half of it was like, we live in a society that's much more accepting than it was a few years ago. And now you're being encouraged to be healthy, to work out, to be strong, because strong is better than skinny and all that kind of stuff. And the other half of my brain was stuck in like the past because, like I was still growing, and you're going through that age where like as a teenage girl, you're just kind of insecure about a lot of things. And so that really damaged my relationship that I had with food, because I was constantly like berating myself for not meeting the standard and then being like, no, you shouldn't feel that way because it's not right. And then I'd feel guilty for feeling that way. And it really damaged my relationship with food for a very long time. And for a long time, I really wondered, like, why is it that we seem so inclusive of body types now that so many people are still struggling with this? Because I've had a lot of people kind of tell me that this is something that they kind of can relate to. And I feel like a while back I watched Taylor Swift's documentary, and she said something in the documentary that really spoke to me. She said that like during her 20s, she basically kind of admitted to really struggling with an eating disorder or disordered eating. And that's why she was like, people were praising her body all the time and saying that she was so thin. And she said that she was basically starving herself and feeling like she was going to pass out at her shows. And then when she started really kind of approaching body image from a healthier perspective and kind of healing and recovering from that, she came to this realization, and she said in the documentary, like, oh, there's, almost no matter what we say as a society is welcome now. Like, there's always some kind of like beauty standard that you're not meeting. If you're thin enough to have like a really thin waist that everyone wants, then you don't have enough weight on you to have the butt that everyone wants. But if you have enough weight on you to have that butt, then you're not thin enough and you don't have that waist. So it's like you can't have everything. And so no matter what you do, there's always something that you're missing. And that really made me realize that this is the way the beauty industry is designed. It's like there's a reason why the body kind of standard changed so quickly from middle school to high school. We so quickly went from Victoria's Secret model to like being strong and being thick. Because like it's impossible to change that fast. Mentally, it's impossible for our brains to catch up to those standards so quickly. And it's just impossible to meet every single standard out there. And the way that the industry is designed that way, so that we constantly feel like we're missing something, we're not enough in a certain way. And that feeds into like our consumerism styles. We constantly feel like we need to try this new diet, to try this new food, to try this beauty product, to try these clothes or whatever. And that was really like a big moment for me when I realized like this is the way that it was designed. Like this is done, like there is a purpose behind this, which is almost messed up in a way, I think.
It's definitely messed up. I think that our capitalistic society can use consumerism in a negative way in a lot of times. But I can actually speak to my own, eating journey before we wrap things up. But when you mentioned Taylor Swift, I thought that was very like relatable to my own experience growing up. I can definitely agree with you that when I was younger, the Victoria's Secret beauty standard was definitely the image. It was be skinny. Like that was what was most important. I'm not really sure that I would say that my high school experience was the same. I know you said that it was a lot more body positive, body inclusive. I feel like from my experience, it was more like, oh, you're skinny, but now you also have to have boobs and ass. And like relating to the Taylor Swift thing, like you got to be skinny, but you also got to have boobs and ass. Like, I don't know. I would say like a small population really fits that description. But like you said, I don't know. I think people try to achieve the impossible. And there was one more thing I was going to add. But I think in regards to body image, when people try to change their bodies and things like that, I think that a lot of the times people don't really think about the journey it takes to get there. And that genuinely really matters. It does matter if you're losing weight, how you get to lose weight. You can't say that it's different if you go from 140 to 120 pounds super quick, unhealthily versus in a healthy weight. There's actually a difference. It's not just a initial to the final destination. And
I would almost say that it's like we kind of like tack on connotations to losing weight or gaining weight. Like I think like a lot of people have gained, like put on a few pounds or gained some weight during the pandemic, and that's not necessarily a bad thing objectively, but I think a lot of us, when it happens, we're like, oh no, there's something wrong with me, and we feel ashamed of that happening. But like in a perfect world there shouldn't be, like there's nothing wrong with like losing weight to be healthy or gaining weight to be healthy. Like the fact is that if you're healthy, if your body is working the way that it's supposed to be, then like that shouldn't give you, like that shouldn't take away your power and your confidence that you have in yourself. Like that's like your body is a shrine and you should worship it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is if you really think about it, it's not the weight that matters, it's your health. So I was talking to a couple friends about this. I will say that even if I'm on the lighter side, that doesn't make me a healthier person than someone who is heavier than me. I know my own eating habits. I'm telling you, I don't eat vegetables and fruits every day. That's a problem. Like, genuinely, your health really matters. And if you think, and there's so much more we could talk about, but we got to end our episode soon. But yeah, when you think about weight, it's just a number. You have to think about everything else in between. You have to think about like your fat to muscle to fat to muscle ratio, your diet. This is a really deep conversation and can go for many long hours. But I think we can conclude.
Yeah. So, I mean, and like before I wrap, I just want to say that like, like with all of this talk about like, oh, like your health being the most important, like it's a difficult journey to get to. And it's like, I think it's something a lot of us recognize, like, oh, we should just put our health first and be happy as long as we're healthy. But the fact is that we live in a very complicated society and social media makes things more complex. And so like, we're all on our own journey. And if you are on your own journey with a body image and mental health, whatever it is, even if it's both, like we encourage you to seek out the help that you need and find a healthy and happy kind of support system, and that like your journey is your own and there's no timeline to it. It's going to take time, or it could take very little time. It just depends on what your timeline is. Like everyone's is unique, and we encourage you to continue working towards your journey, whatever that may be. So yeah, Amy, let's wrap up now.
Yeah, for sure. So thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope that you were able to find some comfort, solidarity, or reassurance in anything else that we talked about today. And I just want to say, make sure to tune in next week for episode 3 on APIDA hate, especially in the age of COVID, and more on boba liberalism.
All right, that's it. Thank you so much for coming, everyone, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye. Hi there. You've just reached the end of this episode of Beyond Boba. If you are a USC student, please head over to our bit.ly link at Beyond Boba and this episode's number to enter our giveaway. Please enter within 1 week of this episode's release to be eligible. As always, let us know any thoughts you have at beyondbobapodcast@gmail.com, and we hope to see you guys in the next episode. That's all from me. See you next time.